All right, last night was more of what we wanted to see from the Cavs. As Cavs fans, they win the game 2 in Cleveland, 107-90. Before the game, Josh Hart was dealing with a bit of an ankle injury after game 1. He was clear to play. He wasn't nearly as impactful last night as he was in game 1, so we'll see as the series progresses whether that was just an off game for him or if this is just going to be a lingering issue for him because of that injury. Now, after the game 1 loss, we heard some post-game talk from some of the Cavs players that they wanted to maybe put an emphasis on getting a little more physical. And at first, those quotes kind of rubbed me the wrong way because it does seem like they would just be playing into the Knicks' hands and maybe giving them the upper advantage of playing their game so they wouldn't have to try to adjust. However, it was more of while it wasn't just only, being a little more bumpy, although the Cavs did seem more willing to throw their weight around in this one. I feel like there was an effort to assert their play style and not let the Knicks really affect what they were doing and try to have New York adjust to them rather than the other way around. And in this game, it worked. Garland was one of those players who was having those quotes in the post game, and Darius Garland definitely backed it up with his play in game 2. Now, the start of the game did concern me because it was starting to look like a little bit of a rerun from game 1 where Okoro was not working out once again. He picked up 2 quick fouls, wasn't really hitting his shots, and the Knicks had the better early start. I believe Okoro was taken off for Cedi Osman, and Jalen Brunson immediately hit his only 3 against Cedi Osman, I think, and I was thinking to myself, well, here we go again. And also, Reggie Miller kept saying Okoro. I don't know how you mispronounce that. His name is spelled out pretty phonetically. It's Okoro, Okoro. I don't know how you keep saying Okoro. His broadcast partner was saying it correctly. I don't know how Reggie Miller kept screwing it up because it happened not once or twice, but throughout the entire game. I don't get it, but whatever. However, what was different about this game is that the Cavs actually started to hit their threes and their open outside shots, whereas last game they were building a brick house for 4 quarters. Danny Green did get in the game in the first quarter. He didn't have that much of an impact on the game, I thought, but he did a decent job of spacing out the floor. That 1-3 he hit near the end of the second quarter to give them a 20-point lead was definitely the game had already turned, but it was definitely an exclamation point on the turning point of the game. And I do want to give JB some credit where seeing that the game 1 rotation in their performance, that was not working out, and he decided to make pretty much immediate changes to how he deployed the bench, which I liked. Another person who stepped up from their bad performance in game 1 was Karis LeVert. He had an amazing game off of the bench in this one, got 40 minutes, and he deserved those minutes too. He hit a buzzer beater in the first quarter to put the Cavs up 3. The game was still very close in this one. I thought early in the game and early in the second quarter, the rebounding thing was still a bit of an issue, but when you have a team as good as the Knicks are getting those offensive boards, that is going to be something that you're inherently dealing with. But I do think that issue got better as the game went on. I feel like as the momentum turned Cleveland's way a little bit, you got some of the guards, and Mobley and Allen were definitely selling all out for those rebounds as the Cavs were turning the game in their favor. Early in the second quarter, though, both teams were having pretty bad shooting percentages, and the Cavs were definitely playing with a bit more of a physical edge than they were in game 1, definitely matching the intensity that the Knicks were bringing. And at that point, when the Cavs started to take their lead in the second quarter, that's when Darius Garland really started to make the game his. The Cavs took a 12-point lead in the second quarter, forcing a New York Knicks timeout. At one point, Julius Randle hit Jalen Brunson in the face, which I thought was pretty funny. The Cavs ended the first up 20, like I mentioned earlier. Darius Garland had 26 points in the first half. He was on fire. He definitely took the words that he said in that postgame conference of trying to assert himself on the game and be more aggressive and physical and all that. He definitely took those words to heart in his game, and he backed it up with this game last night. Karis LeVert played his way. I mentioned he got 40 minutes. He was a second half starter, and Okoro was essentially stapled to the bench for the rest of the night, and it hasn't worked out for Okoro so far in the series. I don't know if that's just because of his injury or if he's coming back and he lost all the momentum that was building up. But it'll be interesting to see how they shape the starting 5 with Okoro being on the downturn that he is, especially with this good game from Karis LeVert here. The Cavs did start hot in the third quarter, continuing their momentum they built into halftime, but they did slow down a little after that. They started to miss some of their shots, and I thought had some bad possessions offensively. And I thought if the Knicks started making their shots and really started to turn it around, then maybe we could be in for a bit more of an interesting game, but the Knicks also didn't really capitalize. So, and the fourth quarter was essentially just a wash. It was essentially a bench game at that point. Knicks never really getting back into it after the Cavs turned it on in the second quarter, and they kind of rode their way to a pretty easy playoff victory. Donovan Mitchell was able to be more of a facilitator. He had 13 assists, which I think is at least a playoff career high for him. Only had 17 points, but again, when you had Darius Garland going off for more than 30, you don't need Donovan Mitchell to take 30 shots like he did in Game 1 when you have guys like Darius Garland and Karis LeVert going off offensively. I thought Evan Mobley had a much better offensive game. He didn't have that many more points, but I do feel like he was a lot more efficient with the shots that he took, and he was definitely much better offensively on the floor. Again, I've had no issues with the Cavs defense as a whole in either of the two games. I just thought that this one was a much better, more cohesive offensive output from the Cavs in this one. Especially Karis LeVert's game, it was a breath of fresh air, where if he was going to be like he was in Game 1 all series, then this might have been over quickly. It's still, the jury's still out on which Karis LeVert we're going to be getting throughout round 1. If it's going to be the Karis LeVert we got in Game 2, where he seems to have his outside shot going, if he kind of embraces a role of being able to score when needed, or if we're going to get Game 1 Karis LeVert where he can't hit the broadside of a barn. Who knows? Cedi Osman, also somebody you want to come in off the bench and contribute some scoring. He didn't shoot well, but he did grab 6 boards. Not an encouraging shooting performance, but he did kind of play well. I'm interested to see what the Cavs do starting at the small forward position on Friday's game in New York, considering, again, Isaac Okoro getting benched. He only played 3 minutes in that game. And if maybe they go with Karis LeVert as the starter in that one, just to try to throw the Knicks off guard a little bit, show them something that they haven't seen at the starting 5. I don't know. The Cavs defense, again, I feel like they're definitely, while I've mentioned all these great games they're having, the Cavs defense as a unit, as a whole, what they're buying into this system, I do feel like that's been the Cavs MVP so far in this series. Of course, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, they got their points. I think they each had 20 or more, but if they can keep limiting everyone else who isn't going to be, sometimes with guys like those, you can play perfect defense and still going to get points, but if you can limit everyone else, if you keep everyone else under control, and you can get those defensive rebounds and not give up second chance points, then the Cavs should be in a pretty good position in most of the games. Not saying that they'll win all of those games if they do those things, but they should be in at least a decent position to win those games. However, even though this was a nice convincing win, just like one loss wasn't the end of the series in Game 1, one victory isn't going to do it either. They're going to New York. The series is still tied 1-1, so there's no real advantage. I don't really believe in game-to-game momentum. I do feel like if the Cavs have momentum, they're going to have to build it all the way back in Game 3. And right now, the Knicks technically have the home court advantage now, because the Knicks do have more home games remaining in the series than the Cavs do. So it's definitely not over by any stretch of the means, but Game 2 was definitely an encouraging sign that we saw after a pretty disappointing Game 1 as far as what happened, all things considered. So thank you all for watching. Made it this far into the video. Let me know what you think is going to happen in Game 3 down in the comments below, and I will see you at the next one.